we were on time to begin our next one, so may I request all these conversations to kind of settle down and continue on the seats while we prepare for the next session. People at the back, could you settle down please for the next session?
Naman, please come. Vidyasagar ji. Please come.
This is a new topic we're trying to tackle, this bazaar, navigating conversations with trade magazines. To discuss this on our panel, we have with us Liz Shackleton, contributing editor, Asia Deadline Hollywood, Natarajan Vidyasagar, editor, Pickle Media, Naman Ramachandran, international correspondent, Variety, and chairing this conversation for us will be Mr. Ajit Rai, film critic and journalist. Thank you so much. Over to you, Ajit sir.
Good evening, friends. We have various esteemed panel, and they are expert about the subject, how to create a market ecosystem for independent filmmaker throughout the world. Because this conversation starts with the logic that Indian participation in the world market revenue of total film market revenue is only 0.5% as I researched. And many of us, our journalists, write time to time. So 95.5% world revenue of cinema business is out of reach from our Indian independent filmmakers. So they have one of the main vehicles to create market around the globe through the trade magazines. And we have the esteemed panel that Pickle is one of important magazine, and Pickles always travel, always meet Vidyasagar ji in Cannes and Berlin and Venice and all. And Liz is based in Hong Kong with the Deadline magazine. And Naman Ramchandran is very famous. You all know Variety magazine. And it's very nice, Naman, I read your edition here. I think 5 editions you are publishing. 5 editions of Variety E-magazine, they are going to publish during this IFFI. So first of all, I would like to ask Mr. Vidyasagar ji, he is very senior and very expert, that how can India create a market-oriented ecosystem throughout the globe for their independent filmmakers, because this is the, just I wrote a book, Hindujas and Bollywood, a global cultural journey of the 1200 Hindi films throughout the globe during 1955 to 1985. And they said that the huge business was created that time, but there was, all films were mainstream commercial Bollywood films. Of course, they created Bollywood, they shaped Bollywood, but these are not the independent films and not the other type of cinema. So how can independent filmmakers, our Indian filmmakers, create or reach to the global market? Vidyasagar ji.
Hello, hi. This is Vidya Sagar. You know, I run a magazine. We publish a magazine called Pickle, and we reach to 14 film festivals and markets across the year. And you know, the question which the moderator has asked straddles between marketing and that, you know, the actual trade publication of, you know, what is it, because there is a you know, the question pertains to marketing, but from a perspective of a trade publication, you know, the first is to do the homework for, you know, when you are reaching a market. So if you are targeting, we have seen a lot of co-production pitches, we have seen a lot of screen lab pitches, ready films available here in the market. So if you have to get your film ready, you have to prepare for Berlin or Cannes or Toronto. You know, from do homework of, you know, how you can reach your film. You know, are there any you know, what are the market avenues available there? Are buyers available in those markets? You know, those are the things that we need to do. The first is to do a lot of homework. The second one is the market will accept only when we have films in festivals and our films in the market screenings. So then only, you know, you create a voice in those markets. Till that time, it happens only we have only around a dozen or 2 dozen films going to these festivals and markets.
Naman, would you like to comment?
Well, it's just echoing what Mr. Vidyasagar said. I can't speak to the marketing side of things because I don't know anything about it. But from the homework point of view, yes, find out who the journalists are who are targeting, who are covering those particular festivals, and whether those journalists cover your territory, and then also if just click on his or her name and see the kind of pieces that they have done before, and see if your subject is something that interests them. And because there must be some reason why they have written about X or Y film before this. And as a filmmaker, you're convinced that you've made the best film in the world, and I'm sure you have, but usually the trade publications think differently. So just do your homework and then approach the journalists accordingly.
Liz, creative economy is very essential for independent filmmakers, because in India, making a first film is not so difficult. But if the money will not return, how can they make another films? So they need that their first film should be properly placed in magazines for the world audience. So what do you suggest on this topic?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd say that the trade magazines, they are an important piece of the marketing puzzle globally, but they're only a small piece of it. You know, you need to create buzz around your film, and you're going to do that in lots of different ways, not just through Variety or Deadline or Screen and the other international trade magazines. But it is an important component of the plan, but timing is absolutely essential. So what I found, I mean, I think I've been working in Asia for the trades for about 20 years now, most of that for Screen International and now for Deadline. People always come to me way too late. I'd say 99 times out of 100, when a director or a producer comes to me and says, please write about my film, it's already way too late. If somebody has already made the film and they're trying to find a festival or a sales agent, and then they come to me, there's no real angle for me to talk about that film, because, you know, if you say, well, it's a wonderful film and I've just finished it, well, you know, you and 100,000 other people around the world. That's the issue. We need some kind of specific angle. So, and adding to what Naman said, which is very true, do your research on the journalists. Also be aware that, first of all, there are two types of journalists at the trade magazines. There are critics, and there are news and features journalists. And usually they're very separate. Naman's a bit of an exception, right? Because you review and...
Yes, I do, but not very often these days.
Yeah, and it's quite rare because, you know, reviewing is a very subjective discipline. And, you know, you're bringing your own opinion and thoughts into what you're saying about the film. And what I do, I'm not a critic. I do news and features and analysis, and it's very objective. So they're very separate disciplines, and usually they're kept quite separate. So what are you trying to do? Do you want a journalist to write about your film and tell people what it's about and why they should be interested? Or is it a finished film that you want them to see and then have a review of? So think about that first. In terms of timing, obviously, you don't want someone to review it until it's going to festivals. But in terms of news and features, you need to approach the journalist as soon as possible. And this is the problem, you know, like, there's 3 or 4 different news angles. We're quite formulaic on the trades. There's 3 or 4 different news angles that we usually fall into a pattern of news story. So first of all, it's when your film is going into production, and it's really going into production, and you have some good cast, ideally named cast. We know with independent cinema that's not always practical. And you have your money set, and you're actually going into production. Then we can write about it, because the headline would be X film starts shooting with blah, blah, blah. Also, if you have a co-production partner, if it looks like this film has some international potential, say you brought an international co-production partner on board, or you have a sales agent, or you've actually sold the film somewhere, there's a French distributor, that's another point where we will write about it.
Tell us about the sales agents, because as Vidya Sagarji was talking earlier also, that Indian filmmakers are lacking the sales agents. So what's the system of sales agent? And how can they get it? If you have any idea.
So partly what I was saying is, come to us when these significant things happen to your film, and we know that it's a struggle for you to have those things happen to your film. And if you do have a sales agent, then it becomes much easier, but the struggle is getting the sales agent. That's not an easy question to answer, and that's something that's beyond, I would say, what we do as journalists. I don't know, Naman, I'm passing the buck.
Well, as an individual, not as a trade journalist, I do help my filmmaker friends by introducing them to sales agents who I know. But then after that, it's up to the sales agents. And now, in a post-COVID scenario, it is very much a buyer's market, not a seller's market, because there's a glut of product that's been building up for the last 2 years. So the sales agents are in a position to pick and choose what they like. So, yeah, there's no easy answer to that. And the bulk of them are concentrated in 3 territories: France, the US, and the UK, and with some minimal presence in Hong Kong, China, and that region, and some bits in Korea. So if you get a list, go to your Cinando. It's a long, hard slog which your producer should do, and I don't expect a director to do it. And once you do get through to a sales agent, then each of them have relationships with trade journalists. So, which brings us back to the topic of this conversation, and then your story gets out into the world that way.
Vidya Sagarji, how can Indian filmmakers, independent filmmakers, do in this regard, that sales agent and sell their films outside the world, India?
See, at any point of time, there are over 5,000 films available in the market in every catalog. So it is extremely difficult to get into that space of what you have to do. There are half a dozen people who represent India as sales agents, as individual consultants. So you have to connect with them, or you have to find a international sales agent to represent your film. That depends on the budget of the film, how you work with them. Those things are available in most of the databases available from the global festivals and markets. But from an India perspective, like how NFDC is facilitating films when you go outside, take films, it would be a good idea to have a common pool of one sales agent representing all independent films, that can be a starting point so that they could start representing the independent films to the global market. That's one of the things which comes to my mind.
So the next question is very important, that this is the, do you feel that after publication or after publishing an article about a film, it matters who read this and how does it impact on their film business? Suppose somebody made Suraj Kumar or somebody made film thinking of him like him, and he approached you, just for our young filmmakers, I am asking, and you wrote a beautiful article in your magazine. So who are the readers and how much they matters?
Well, our readers are all mostly industry, so it's sales agents, it's festival programmers, it's potential distributors in different countries. I think where trades make a difference is it kind of makes the film real, almost. It brings credibility. So if we've written about something, I suppose the industry, the sales agents, the buyers, the programmers, they look at us as a kind of filter. So if we've written about something, it's maybe worth them taking a look at it. But we're also under a lot of pressure, right? So, we go to all these markets and festivals, and we're doing dailies, and we're churning out massive amounts of copy. We never have enough people. Our budgets are always being cut. So we're not really this sort of, we're a filter, but we're not a filter in the sense like a festival programmer is, right? So sometimes we write about things that are not great. We used to joke at Cannes. I mean, it's probably a bit better situation than it used to be. But we used to joke that if all the films we'd written about at the Cannes market, if we went back a couple of years later to see how many of those films actually got made, it would probably be quite a low percentage. So it can help your film, but that's what I'm saying. It's not, you need everything all together. You need a sales agent. You need someone, if you want to go international, you need someone to take that film out internationally. You need festivals. And I think with the pandemic, with all the problems we're having in the theatrical market around the world at the moment, festivals have become even more important, festivals and awards, because they are that filter that helps people decide if they want to buy a film or go and see a film. Where trade magazines are only a really small part of that. We're all kind of moving cogs working together, but at the end of the day, your film might not get written about in the trades at all, but it might get picked up by a sales agent and go to Cannes. And then we'll kick ourselves and think, oh, we should have spotted that one earlier. But it does happen.
But
It's also-
I'm over to you, just one comment, that we all visiting international film festivals, and we know India, the huge country, huge population, we are, I think, first or second in the world making in numbers the films, and different type of films we are making, and huge numbers, 2,000, 2,500 and all. But as soon as the festival matters appears, its scene is very disappointing. Last 20 years, there are no Indian films in Cannes Film Festival in competition, main competition. And if any film doesn't enter into main competition, how does it goes to the magazines and all, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Screen International, and all magazines? They are focusing mainly the competition section. Like Berlin and Venice also. A very, very little number of Indian films compete in these festivals. So now over to Naman.
Sorry, what was the question?
Question is, in festival, India representation is very less. In main international film festival, Cannes, Berlin, and Venice. Even more than even South Korea, even other small countries, Iran and all others, their representation are very huge numbers in these festivals. So why it happened that India is nowhere in international scene in matter of cinema?
Okay. I can't speak for festivals' selection policies, but once they are selected, I don't think we look only at the competition titles. Yes, we do concentrate on the competition titles, but we also look at the other titles which we think, as trade journalists who have been doing this for a long time, which will have legs and which will travel the world, and it's likely to, get a commercial release or even, a good streaming platform, and then we write about it. And it's the other flip side to that is outside of the main festivals, just getting selected for a festival is not news really, because we get so many pitches saying my film has been selected for X, Y, Z festival. That on its own is not news. Even if it's an A-list festival, Cannes shows what, 150 films or something, and we can't write about all 150. There needs to be news.
And also, we write about the festival lines up when the festival announces it,
Yeah.
not when a filmmaker tells us
Yeah.
their films in the festival.
Exactly. So it's quite difficult to pick out individual films from a lineup of 100 or more without any further hard news beyond that.
So tell us, Naman, about the reach of variety and your readers.
It's like all the other trades. It's all over the world. I would say of all the trades, variety has a lot more consumer focus as well. As in, it reaches a lot of non-trade people as well. I would say that.
Non-trade people.
Yeah, as in
Mainly.
not mainly, also.
Also.
Yeah.
Also. So do you think that, what about impact of an article published in Variety about any film? Do you think is any impact in trade or in marketing or in sale?
Well, it's the same with all the trades. As Liz said, it kind of gives it some validation. The trades act as a filter, and the market becomes aware that such and such project exists. So, and for a filmmaker, it becomes something that they can show the PDF or whatever to potential sales agents or buyers or streaming platforms. So it just puts it on the map. That's all it does.
So tell us, how can an independent filmmaker reach your magazine for articles and for some support?
By approaching us.
Because as he said, Vidyasagar ji, that 5,000 titles are available at a time. So you have to pick and choose, or you have to decide.
It's the filmmakers usually reach out to us, and then the first question we ask is, what's the news, what's the angle? And if there is a new valid news and angle for our readers, then we go ahead. Or we look at what the filmmaker has done in the past, and say, for example, if it's, I don't want to name any filmmaker, but if someone's last film, okay, let's say Abdullah Mohammed Saad, he's not here. His film was in competition from Bangladesh in Cannes. Now, when he makes his next film, and his first film won the best film at Singapore before that, and Live from Dhaka. So when he makes his next film, that automatically becomes of interest, because the trade readers would be aware of his first two films, and so you need not necessarily have a hard news angle for it.
Vidyasagar ji, tell something about your Pickles magazine. And as we read in the prospectus that the reach of Pickles magazine is very huge. in festival circuit?
No.
And who are your readers? And does it matters that if some article published in Pickle and then it creates the creative economy for the films? We will go for question answer after this discussion.
See, as a strategy, our objective of launching the Pickle magazine is to help Indian content and Indian entertainment industry, expand its global footprint. So, we have been on its journey for the last 15 years. We launched the first edition when India celebrated 60 years of independence at the Cannes Film Festival, where Cannes was also celebrating 60 years of 60 years during that time. So from that time on, we have been reaching to 14 markets. Every month is an edition focused on a particular market, whether it is European film market or MIP-TV, MIPCOM, Berlin, Toronto, AFM. To reach out to that thing, we launched it as a strategy to reach out the market, because that's the only way you could cut down on the distribution cost and reach out to as many people in that particular market. So our focus is on 4 sides. One is helping Indian people as an objective, help Indian people sell the content, reach out to buyers. The second one is for the foreign film people to get the shootings done in India, get service work done out of India. The third one is connecting people for co-production, and the fourth one is the networking. So, what we have in the last 14 year odd, what we have achieved is creating the chaos, clearing the chaos in identifying people who they can work with in India from the service perspective of how they can identify and who they can work with in India. That process is very clear. And and that's the only thing which we have achieved so far in terms of helping the service companies, post-production companies, and people who do offshore work out of India, especially in the animation, visual effects, and the gaming part of it. The content part of it has not worked because, in the sense that that every territory has 3 or 4 buyers, just that 3 or 4 buyers to do it. So and those 3 or 5 buyers will look for a mainstream film than an independent film. So we need to, there is a long work to be happening during that front. We help connect people who have content with people who are buying in festivals and markets, and we are just a platform for it. To position India particularly from that perspective.
Liz, as a foreign journalist, what is your criteria for Indian content? Because if I ask a question that India making 2,000 films a year, and then you have to choose.
How do you
some
choose
of them.
what you write about?
So
Yeah.
this is the people want to know.
Well,
that
I mean, it's...
as a foreigners, because we are talking about the global market, outside India market.
Yeah.
So what are the main criteria you are looking for in Indian content?
So I cover lots of Asian territories. I also do China, Japan, Korea. But it doesn't differ between... There's nothing specific about Indian cinema I'm looking for. In every territory, it's what Naman said, really. You need, or what I said earlier, we just need an angle. And the angle would be, what's the filmmaker done before? If it's a first-time filmmaker, is the producer well-known? What do I put in my headline? There has to be something that draws attention to this story. It could be the cast, or maybe it's about a really interesting topic, social issue, that everyone's talking about at the moment. We need an angle. And that's the problem. A lot of people come to me and they're not quite sure how to present the film. But can I just make one point? It's a very simple and practical point, but it makes a massive difference to whether or not we write about your film. Have good stills. It's that simple. Because nowadays, most of what we do, I mean, Variety does a lot of print, Deadline, we're mostly online, but everything goes online eventually that we're writing about, and we can't post anything. The content management system of our website prevents us from posting a story unless it has a picture. And the picture has to be a decent still, not super high resolution, but it has to be good enough that it's going to look good on our website. And it astounds me. Even big Bollywood films, they'll come to me and it's a week before release and I'll say, have you got any stills? No, nothing. So one of the best things you can do is have someone on your set with you. I know it's expensive, it's an added cost, and nobody thinks about it until too late, but have someone taking stills, have an on-set stills photographer, or at least get some decent screen grabs afterwards, because we can't do anything. I post copy directly onto Deadline's website. I did that also for Screen, but I can't do that without good pictures.
Yeah, sometimes, especially from this country, it's shocking that one day before release you don't have a decent picture.
And the other thing is production notes. Now, you know, we don't want to be spoon-fed, but we're all very busy. And especially if you're at a market like Cannes or AFM, if somebody wants to sit down with you for half an hour and explain everything about the film, that's great, but we probably haven't got that time. So if you send us decent production notes, it doesn't have to be super long, a synopsis, the main cast, main above-the-line crew, maybe a few bios of who's in the film if they're not well known, that makes a massive difference. It doesn't have to be even a press release, just, you know, something there that I can just pull off and read and quickly bash out a story.
Do you feel any aesthetical and cultural difference between Indian filmmaking and European filmmaking? Because European sensibility is different. And some people say, some journalists wrote articles like that, Vidyasagar ji, you know that he made a film for Europe, not for India.
But I don't see that as a thing, because if you have seen the co-production pictures that has happened on the day one, you know, 50% of the film presented in the here in the Film Bazaar are LGBT films. So, you know, we have crossed those lines.
So Liz, how do you feel? And Naman also, you comment, because we felt that there is a very gap between Indian filmmaking and European filmmaking, as content, as aesthetics, as cultural differences. So maybe some films are Indo-cultural,
Culturally specific.
and maybe some films attracts European audience that may not attract Indian audience.
That's true, but then I think when you start making your film, you have to think, is this a film just for an Indian audience? Or is it a film that's going to travel? And obviously that's going to affect how it comes out. But I think on the trades, the international media, there is a slight growing awareness, I don't know if Naman would agree with me, or understanding of Indian cinema. And it started with Hindi cinema, first mainstream, but also I think the independent cinema. There are more and more journalists and critics and even editors around the world who understand the film language and the style, even if it is quite culturally specific. A film like Jallikattu, for example, I would say that's a very culturally specific film, but it got quite a good response in international markets. So there's an awareness that's growing. But also, what's exciting in the last couple of years is, you know, when I was working at Screen, I used to really struggle to get them to let me write about Telugu or Tamil or any Indian cinema that wasn't Hindi. It was just a step too far for them. But now, thanks to RRR, they keep asking me about this company in Hyderabad and that film, and, you know, so use that. If you're making films that are not in Hindi, this is your moment, because suddenly my editors in Los Angeles and London, they care for the first time in 20 years. I mean, you must have had that.
Yeah, I mean, as we speak, one of my colleagues is interviewing Rajamouli at the BAFTA, literally at this point in time. And this would not have happened a couple of years ago. And to go back to your question, I wouldn't say there's a gap. I would say that the storytelling idioms are different, And it's just that the West is coming to understand those storytelling idioms very belatedly. But if you go back in time, and I have to raise Satyajit Ray again, he made films, as he said, first and foremost for his Bengali audience. If it worked for them, he was happy, but it worked all over the world simply because his storytelling technique was kind of attuned to the West. The one film he made, which was entirely in the Bengali storytelling tradition, Gopika and Bhagavan, was a massive hit in Bengal, but did not work on the festival circuit abroad at all. So it's just a question of different ways of storytelling, that's all.
Fortunately and unfortunately, those filmmakers, like they are very popular in Europe, and their films being distributed in the past, like Adur Gopala Krishnan, Satyajit Ray, Shaji N. Karun, Girish Kasravalli, Gautam Ghosh, Janu Barua, and so many. And nowadays, the Punjabi filmmakers Gurvinder Singh and Neeraj Ghaiwan in Hindi. And these are the main they made, as you were right, that they made first their own audience. Because India is a country, huge country, and we have the huge languages, many languages, I think 22 languages. They are making films. Even in tribal language, they are making film in Tulu and in other Santhali. And this festival showcased one first time in the history of IFFI that Maithili, a very small language of Bihar. And then they have to, so we call Indian cinema, but now we are open for question answer sessions because we have only 10 minutes. So if mic is available, please give them to mic to ask. And please specify to whom you ask.
I would like to ask Liz, because this topic is navigating conversation with trade magazines. So you were sharing about the you were talking earlier about 4 points to talk and pitch to trade magazines, but you were cut short when you were talking about the second. So can you finish that part of the conversation?
I have
you.
notes. Yeah, so when your film's going into production, so your cast and finance is pretty much there. That's a good point for us to do a story. That's a headline. If you have any international partners coming on board, so co-production, sales agent, a distributor. Sorry, when I said 4 points, two were points where we won't write about it, actually. So those are the 2 points where we will. But like Naman said, if you just come to us and say, I've been selected for this festival, we can't write about you because of that, because the festival would announce the lineup. It doesn't come from the filmmaker. And then sometimes people come to us and they don't have any angle. They're just saying the film's made, it's shot, I'm looking for a sales agent. And that's the issue, you see, that's the problem. That's not a story for us. But we know that's the point where the filmmaker needs us the most. And it's almost like, you know, when the filmmaker has got the thing that they're looking for, that's when we'll write about the film. That's the problem. And I've never really got my head around how to overcome that. Now, there is another route to get the trades to write about you. I have very mixed feelings about it. There's advertorial, promotional features. Sometimes the trades are paid to do a feature where they'll write about a feature about a specific film. The issue with that is that it's obvious, you know, we have to make it look obvious that it's been paid for, and I think that takes away from the credibility a little bit, because it begs the question, well, why didn't the journalist just write about it anyway? But a good time to approach the trades is also, a lot of the trades, not Deadline, but Screen does this, and Variety does this, they work with the festival to produce a daily. They're being funded by the festival to do that quite often. So they have extra budget. I mean, everyone struggles with budget and time. And as part of their package, they'll do interviews with filmmakers. So we used to do this for Screen. You know, we'd look at some of the films in New Currents, and we'd do interviews with the filmmakers. And we'd also do, I think Naman does quite a lot of projects that are in development, films that haven't even been made yet, but they've been selected for a projects market. That's more likely to happen, though, when the film has been selected for a particular event. We wouldn't just do it off the cuff because there's no, it's kind of a format thing. Sorry, that was a bit rambly, but I hope that explains.
Next question, please.
Hi Liz, Zaigam Nusrat. Another question for you. So the first one was that to complete the, the pointers that you had. So, you said you're going to look at the filmmaker, you're going to look at the cast. And so basically, if we're a filmmaker who's got none of those, so we don't have a big cast, we're not big filmmakers, we're just, grinding and sort of getting our stuff out there. But we do have a story, say we've been, so for example, for me, I've been developing a short film trilogy since 2018. And there is like some things about it that really goes throughout 3 different films. So now that story necessarily would not really have anything that can, the clickbait setup that, they're going to see a Shah Rukh Khan and they're going to click it. So if that's not the case, then how would Deadline or Variety, it's open to both of you, how would then sort of, how would a filmmaker like me sort of drive their way into, say, Deadline or Variety or any other platform?
So there's no name cast, first-time director, is the producer well known? That's another thing. I mean, quite often, like Anthony Chen, for example, he's a Singaporean director, but now he's doing a lot of producing. So he's just made a film with a first-time director. It's been written about tons because of Anthony, not because of the director, who's perfectly aware of that. So, or the production company, or is it somehow a collaboration between 2 countries? Or is there something about the story, maybe it's a hot topic or trend that everyone's talking about at the moment? These are all the sorts of angles that we look for. And it's very, very difficult for us to get our editors to agree to us doing a story unless we've got one of those elements. It doesn't always have to be Shah Rukh Khan, but there has to be something, unfortunately.
Please give the mic to the front.
Hi, I'm Murtaza Ali Khan. I'm a film critic. Firstly, I must say that it's been a very rare pleasure listening to you all because these days it's very seldom now that the world doesn't have people like Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert. So critics today are not as vocal as they used to be, and they're not writing as much as they should write about the art of film criticism. So today I must congratulate the moderator and the panelists that we were finally able to listen this rare side which is not exposed much these days. My question to all the 3 panelists is that while I was growing up, there used to be a clear segregation that, okay, these are trade analysts and these are critics. As I've grown more and more, and especially in the recent decade, what I've seen is all the trade analysts are now critics and all the critics are now trade analysts. And what really confuses me and what really confuses a lot of the people is that where do you draw the line? We used to talk about cinema as an art form, art for art's sake, but now the cinema and trade is becoming, so inseparable that we don't really see cinema or art in absence of trade. So where do we draw the line, and what can be done to reclaim this segregation?
Vidyasagar ji, I think you would like to respond.
See, we have decided from the beginning only, the people who has to write about a film analysis or criticism in a film review, they are all separate people. We have segregated them from, our operation side of doing interviews or features or anything like that. So, from that perspective, we have a set of people who will be only writing about film reviews. So, in terms of, the thing is, we don't mix both those 2 things unless it goes as a quote from whoever we interview on what they are saying. Otherwise, we don't. There is a differentiation between who write reviews and who write the normal edit features.
I would love a response from the other 2 distinguished panelists also.
Well, I think this trend of trade analysts also reviewing films mostly happens in India, right? I mean, I don't think, I'm not aware of it happening outside.
It's mainly here.
It's mainly in Bombay.
And personally, I agree. It's a bit of an issue, because like I was saying before, one thing is very subjective and the other is very objective, and it's best to keep them separate as much as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, it is best to keep them separate, as Liz and Mr. Vidyasagar said. And I'd like to quote the Variety chief critic Peter de Bruges, who told me this morning that critics are sad, lonely people who should live in a hermetically sealed container under a rock and only exist for the film. But sometimes within that publication, there is no one else with that kind of depth of knowledge of the market and of the cultural nuances of the individual language for India, for the individual language states. So, so sometimes I have to wear both those hats because I speak 7 Indian languages and I've grown up all over the place. So, and I understand all of them. But it is in an ideal world completely kept separately.
Thank you so much.
Any more questions?
The time is over now. I think I am consistently looking the watch. So we have to bind up the session here. And thank you very much. Thank you Vidyasagar ji, Leach and Naman Ramchandran. And we discussed very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to this panel for this engaging session, which I'm sure will help our filmmakers plan their strategy ahead. Yes.
Let's have a group photograph. Yeah.